Alright, welcome back guys to another Mortal Kombat 1 modding tutorial. The last one seemed to go over pretty well, and so I have something that's new and something that should be pretty new to the scene. Right now there's only two of them that have been done, and both of them have been from me, and that is the Mortal Kombat 1 stage mods. Um, this uses basically the exact same technique from the skin mod video, so if you already done that, this should be very familiar, but we are going to go through it basically step by step. I'm going to show you through the entire process, so that way you guys can definitely know how to do it. This is actually the second time I'm recording this video because the first time I ran into a bit of an issue that I didn't know about until I had done it that time. And we'll talk about it a little bit this time. But um, yeah, we're just going to get started. A couple things I want to talk about real quick before that, though. This is going to be a long process. This is going to take a lot longer than it would for a skin mod, as you could probably expect, considering that you're doing an entire stage instead of a skin. It's not like incredibly long. This isn't going to take you like weeks to do, but that is something to keep in mind. Plus, you can probably refine it over time. But the simple process of getting it into the stage is relatively simple, but it'll take some time. So if this video is pretty long, that's probably why. The other thing is that getting stages online that you can, then put into the game is pretty tricky. It's a lot easier to find skins online and like character mesh models online than it is for environments, especially from other games. So it might be worthwhile to learn how to rip models from games so that, let's say you want to import a Mortal Kombat X stage into MK1, you can then do that after you learn how to rip some of those models and arrange them in Blender to recreate the stage essentially. But that's not what this video is going to be about. I would just like to mention that because it is pretty hard to find some of these stages online. But with that said, we're going to just get right into it. Today I'm going to be doing the Mortal Kombat 9 Evil Monastery. The reason why I have my window kind of weird is because there were some unsavory images on the recommended. So I wanted to make sure that that's not there in the video. But by Yuri World Ruler, they're the one that ripped this, so you can check them out. And I'm going to close that so I can actually full screen this. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up Blender to actually get our model and put it in Blender so that way um, we can get it all funky. One thing to note about doing this is that we will be consolidating every texture and material from the model into um, one texture and one material. That sounds like it's going to be very hard. Trust me, it's not, because I'm going to show you guys how to do that very easily. But I did want to mention that because it might make some stages a lot harder to mod in because if there's like a way too high material count or texture count, you might have to do some things in order to make it work. But again, I'll show you guys how to make that much easier. So once you've imported your model, we're just going to leave it exactly like this. If we put in this, we go into this mode, now we can see the textures, and we see it looks pretty good. It's nothing that we really need to change. One thing you might notice is like, let's say in this model, we're going to be facing this way out. You do kind of want to make sure that whatever's behind where the camera will be over here isn't going to obstruct anything. It might be worthwhile to just remove that model if you think that will be the case. So take, for example, let's say this bench was like, it's not origined correctly, so I'm not going to scale it, but let's say it was scaled like super big, and for some reason, if my camera was over there, it would block the camera. At that point, I would just go and delete this model. In this case, I don't have anything like that, so I'm not going to worry about it, but that is something to keep in mind. But once you have this, we're going to consolidate this into a single texture file and to a single material. The way we're going to do that is, and actually first thing I'm going to delete this armature and delete this collection so that way it's all just out here. But anyway, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to download this little plugin called Map Combiner. So if I come here, and I just come here, I'll have this link down in the description. Just like last video, they won't be hyperlinks because I don't want to verify my identity to YouTube because I don't do YouTube too much. But just copy and paste this link into your browser and it should come up with this. Installing plugins are pretty easy in Blender. Just go to the releases, download the zip. You'll come into Blender, edit, preferences, go to the add-ons, go to install, find wherever it's installed, and then just double click it. It will show up, it'll say, it should say, let's see if I can find which one mine is. Aria's Material Combiner, right? It should say something like that, just check it. Once you have that, you'll have this screen. They'll have this tab on your, I forget what this is called, but whatever. And what you're going to do is you're just simply going to click Generate Material List. Now, actually, one thing I do recommend is that if you think you're already ready with like all your meshes, because it does have to be one mesh as well, we're going to just press A to select all of them. We're just going to press Control J, and then I'm going to go ahead and update this list again. This just makes it a bit easier. But once you've done that, you can usually leave all these settings the same, unless there's some very specific cases. For example, if your stage has a lot of textures, and so by doing this, the texture file might get too big, sometimes it's better to go to automatic because it'll reduce how big the image is. Because these images will have a lot of blank space. That is because as they're combining these materials, some of those alphas are going to transfer, and if they have like, they're doing it row by row, so if there's like 4 rows, but the fourth row only has like 2 materials and it could have like 10 or whatever, then those 8 spots are just going to be blank. You know, stuff like that. And so once you have done that, if that is the case, you'll switch it to automatic, but the texture file can get pretty big before Unreal won't accept it, so it shouldn't be a big issue. You're just going to say save atlas to. It doesn't really matter where you save it to. I usually just save it in the folder that my mesh is at, and you'll press create atlas. Once you've created the atlas, you'll notice a couple things might change with your model. For one, some things might not look as detailed. As you can see, I think on this right spot, some things lost some detail. Typically speaking, this is because as you're bringing all these materials and textures together, the material settings from other materials won't transfer, and it'll all be put into like a default one. And so one of the other issues you'll find is that all of a sudden, all the back faces of our mesh is no longer showing. This is not something we can fix. This is because of a little thing we call backface culling. If we click this checkbox, it'll get rid of it, and it'll go back to normal. But in Unreal Engine and MK1, they do backface culling. Now, what you can do is, let's say hypothetically, I have this material, I just did not material, I just have this mesh and I did that, and this this little skeleton face right here is going the wrong way for some reason. So if I go into edit mode and I select the faces that are not called in the right direction, so let's say I just grab some of these just to showcase it. You can grab which ones are not facing the right direction, select them, go into mesh, normals, and then flip. And then what that'll do is it'll flip it in the opposite direction. In my case, I don't have any of those that are facing the wrong direction, so I don't have to do anything like that, but that is something that you might encounter. But once you have the mesh and it looks pretty good, all the textures have been combined, it's pretty simple, just export it as an FBX. So personally, I already have one. It's this one right here, so I'm not gonna bother. But if you don't, go ahead and do that. Once you've done that, you can either close Blender or minimize it. We'll come back to it later, but I'm just gonna minimize it for now. We're then gonna open up UModel. And I'm actually gonna open this up through my desktop folder because whenever I search it, it messes some things up sometimes. Excuse me. Um, Open up UModel. This is the same as the skin mesh. If you don't know how to set this up, it's pretty easy. Download UModel, and then there'll be, if you go to this thread here, which I'll also have linked down in the description, um, it gives you the instructions pretty much right here. Download UModel, replace the umodel.exe with umodel ACL 2.1, and then just run it. However, what I do is I don't actually replace the model umodel.exe. I just add it in there and then I just run it from that exe instead because it just makes it a bit easier. Um, but once you've done that, make sure you go to the path of your game files. For me, I already have it in my quick access. But if you don't, that's simply going to be where your MK1 folder directory is. And so you'll be like right here, you'll go into MK12, content, and then packs. You could also probably just do it from MK1, but this just ensures that you're only getting the packs and not the movies and such. Once you've done that, click Override Game Detection, press Unreal Engine 4, Mortal Kombat 1, go into Morph Target, turn that off, press OK. Now, in the same thread, we're going to grab this AES key, paste it in here, mine, and we should now have access to the game files. What we're going to do is we're going to go to Game, Disk, and Environment. This is the folder that has all of our environments, including all the stages and the main menu stage, stuff like that. Now, this is when we get to the part where we're going to select which stage we want to replace. Here's a couple of important notes about that. Number one, if you can avoid it, avoid any stages that do not have an open sky. What does that mean? Basically, any stage that's contained within like a building, you should try to avoid. The reason why is because the way that games work nowadays is that they render the lighting almost beforehand. Basically, the game builds the lighting already so that whenever you load into the game, you're not wasting a lot of processing power on constantly doing real-time lighting. Some of the lighting will be in real time. That's why, when your character moves, the shadows are moving with it, but not all of it will be. And because of these static meshes and the fact that they're static, it means that the lighting is likely going to be pre-built. And because of that, if you have one of these models and they're in an indoor building or something like that, the lighting might be really bad when you import the model. So to try to avoid that, a lot of the open sky maps in the game will have better built lighting that will be better when you replace it. With that said, the same process will work with any of these other maps. So maps that I would personally avoid are like the Tea House, maybe Johnny Cage's Mansion, probably the Temple of Kataravala, but most of those other maps should probably work fine. So in our case, in my case, I should say, we're just gonna do the garden. This is a stage I haven't done yet, so hopefully I don't run into any issues like before. The other thing I will mention right now is that I'm going to have some of these maps in a drive file that will, or like a zip file that's in the Google Drive that you can download from to make the process a lot easier. But not all the maps will be on there. It will just be the ones that I've personally done already. So I'm still going to walk through the entire process if you want to do one of these other maps that I haven't done already. But I do recommend that, and I do recommend that you follow those because I don't want everybody to be replacing the same maps. But if it's too much time or you're running into a lot of issues, feel free to grab some of those. But anyway, like I said, I'm going to be using the garden. So we need to then figure out what exactly the model we are going to replace. Because the thing about this is that we're not just going to, be able to import the model in and then just like hide everything else. We have to actually replace one of these models and then hide everything else. But the problem with that is you have a couple things to think about. For one, you need to think about whether or not the model that you're replacing is going to have any duplicates. Because if the model is duplicated across the map, you're going to run into an issue where your model that you're replacing is also duplicated across the map. And because what you're duplicating is an entire stage, especially depending on how big it is going to probably overlap with um, the models of each other's models. And because of that, you want to make sure that whatever you're grabbing is likely going to be the only instance of that model in the map. Sometimes this is really easy. Take, for example, if you do like the Wuxi Academy, it's really easy. Just grab the central platform or grab some of the statues that are holding it. Those are obviously not going to be duplicated. If you're doing like, what was the other map I did? Sundo. Obviously the little body of like I don't know what to call it, like statue of King Jared that's kind of floating in the water is obviously the only instance of that there's going to be. So that's something to think about. For me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this main tree stand. A lot of the time, what you can do to try to help and figure out if what you're grabbing will be the only instance is if there's a word that says something like main. This is usually a big indicator that it's the only instance of that in the map. It's not always the indicator, but typically speaking, it is a pretty decent indicator. So for me, I'm just going to use this stand right here. So with that said, we now need to go back into, no, not Blender. Never mind. We're not going back into Blender. Now we need to open up our Unreal Engine 5, not 5, Unreal Engine 4 custom engine for Mortal Kombat 1. If you don't know how to set this up, I did talk about it in the skin mesh video, but if you haven't seen that, I will go over it briefly here as well. Essentially, you're going to follow the guide here on the thread as well. You'll need to link your Epic Games account to your GitHub account. If you don't have either one of those, make those and then link them. You can go to this link right here that will give you some steps on how to do that. Once you have done that, you should then be able to open up this link, which will take you to these downloads of different custom Unreal Engine versions. So if you don't see this link, if whenever you click this link, it says like 404, something not found or something like that, it's likely because you did not properly link your Epic Games to your GitHub. So make sure you do that. Once you've done that, you're going to download both of these zip files. You're going to extract them. Remember that if you don't download both of them, they won't extract. But extract this original one right here. And then you're going to launch that one. And once you launch it, I don't remember where mine's downloaded actually. But wherever it is that you have that, I think it's just this. But wherever it is, um, you are just simply going to grab it, and there should be like something that you can use. So one of the EXEs that can launch it. Once you've launched it, it'll ask for like which project you want to use. You should probably have nothing, so just create a new project. Make sure you call it MK12. If you call it anything else, this won't work. And then you should have it set up. There's just a couple more things you need to do. You need to turn on IO store, enable chunks, and assign a chunks, and enable assigning chunks. My bad. And there's this little link here to tell you how to do that. But it's pretty simple. Just go to project settings, packaging, use pack file, use IO store, generate chunks. And then in the editor preferences, go to experimental, then allow chunk ID assignments. And that's it. That's all you need to do. Once you've done all that, or if you've done all that already, You will now have an Unreal Engine, custom engine like this. What you'll need to do is you'll need to make a file structure that is identical to whatever it is that you're replacing within Mortal Kombat 1. In this case, we're doing a stage. So we're going to do, in the content folder, we're going to make a disk folder, then an IMS folder, and now we're going to make a, which one am I replacing? Give me a second. I already forgot. Garden. We're going to create a garden folder, and we're going to create a folder called asset. And this is where a lot of work is going to go in. Because what we're going to do is we're going to replace this model that we think that we're going to be replacing definitely first. And then we get to do the fun process of replacing every single other model in the game, which is going to take a lot of time. But again, fret not. If you don't want to waste all that time, if you don't want to be the one to do it, I will have some of these already done for you in that drive file. The ones I'm planning on putting in there is the Garden Lantern Festival and Woo Academy. The Tea House, I'm not doing yet because, like I said before, that one didn't work out very well. But these three should hopefully work out very well. If this one doesn't, then these two should. And you can just download it. What you could do is you can go into your folder. So I haven't actually made this zip file yet, but I'll show you quickly. You can simply go to wherever you have this project set up in your file directory. So for me, that's in this documents, Unreal Projects MK12 content, and you'll just go into, and I'll probably just have it in this file structure already, so you can just copy and paste it in here. And so then all those assets should be in here. If they don't show up within your Unreal Engine immediately, you might have to restart the engine for them to show up. But again, that's just if you want to use the ones that I've already done. If not, and you do want to actually use one of these other stages, because maybe you don't want to conflict with one of mine, or maybe you're scared that other people might use the ones I've already done and you don't want to conflict with theirs, I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to first, because I think it's better to do this first instead of later when you forget about it, is we are going to do this one that we are planning on replacing with our main model, the one that the stage we're actually trying to import first. So we're just going to make this folder structure. So for us, it's garden main tree. We're then going to move to the mesh folder, and we're going to then copy. No, actually, I should probably import it first. Make sure you have the folder open, unlike me, of the one that you're putting in. MK9 Evil Monastery. And so I'm importing this in. I'm just going to press import all. And because this is this contains the model that we're actually planning on replacing, we're also going to need a matte folder and a texture folder in that garden main tree, or whatever yours is called. We're going to need all three of these folders. And we're going to move the material over to the matte folder and the texture over to the texture folder. Once you've done that, now it's time to rename them. So to do that, what I personally do is I go to whatever I'm replacing. So for me, it's this main tree stand. I copy the package path. I then rename this, delete the .u asset part, and then go back to where it says SM, and then I delete everything before the SM. And so that I make sure that it's 100% the file name. And we're going to do the exact same thing for the mat. This one's a little bit harder, but I'm sure it's probably just, I'm going to assume that's probably this main tree sheet. If not, that's something I'll deal with later. But again, I just copy it, go to where it says MI, and then delete everything before that. And then texture. Make sure that whatever texture you're replacing is the D texture. Don't replace the N texture, don't replace the E texture, don't replace the RMA texture, or any other texture you might be seeing. Just replace the D texture for now. So we're going to copy this package path, delete all this stuff again, and yeah. Now that we've done that, now we get to the fun part of replacing all of the other files in the game. Now, I'm gonna show you guys how to do this. Pretty easy. First thing you should do is this doesn't really matter, but just because. But I would usually just export one of these models. It doesn't really matter which one because we're going to modify it anyway. We're gonna go back into Blender. I'm gonna open up a new file, if it'll let me. Don't save. And I'm simply going to import that model. Again, this isn't really entirely necessary. You could do this a little bit differently, but this is just the way I'm doing it. Okay, I guess I've done a little bit too much experimenting recently. Need to remember where I need to go. It's here. Okay, there we go. Garden, asset, main tree, mesh. So once you have your model in, oh, this is a very big model. This was a lot bigger than I was expecting. Wow, that is very big. Okay. Anyway, once you find whatever model it is you're going to use, it doesn't really matter how big it is. You're going to go into edit mode. You're going to go into face select. You're just going to grab one of these random faces. You're then going to press Control I. This will select every face other than the one that you selected. And you're going to go to delete faces. This will leave only one face left in the mesh, and I'm just going to scale it down a bit. The reason why we do this is because we need to have a mesh that we can import into Unreal Engine, but we want it to be as blank as possible, but we can't actually import a mesh that just doesn't have anything on it. Unreal Engine won't let us do that, or at least whenever I've tried to do it, Unreal Engine won't let me. I don't know, maybe other people know how to do that. But this is just simply what I do to sidestep that, is just make a very small face, export it as an FBX, just as you would anything else. Turn off bake animation, turn off armature, per usual. And then just go into, I typically just put this in the folder that you're going to be using, but it's completely up to you. Like the folder that has my mesh and everything. And I just name it blank FBX usually. And just press export. And then once you've done that, we can start importing and replacing these other models that we don't care about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import that blank FBX, press import all. You can delete the material because it's not going to matter. You're then going to want to go into this blank FBX, and just to make for certain that this model is not going to appear anywhere within our map, we're going to go to the import translation, and we're going to make it a crazy number. So we're going to make it negative 10,000 is what I like to do on every axis. And then just press free import base mesh, and it should just make it disappear entirely from the map. Because while it will technically still be on the map, it'll be super far away from where it's originally placed. So once you've done that, you're simply going to save, close it, and then you're going to rename this to whatever models you're replacing. I'm getting a bit of a lag spike here. Not sure what's happening. I guess switching tabs was a very hard task for my computer right now. Give me 1 second as this eases up, hopefully. My computer loves to do this sometimes when I'm trying to do these mods. It's mostly when I'm recording. I think my PC just isn't built well for recording. We're going to want our U model viewer so that we can remember which models we are replacing. There we go. So for us, it's this garden main tree branches was the one that we took this from, but it doesn't matter because what we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste the blank FBX that we made, and we're just going to use that multiple times and then just keep on renaming it to the other assets that we need. Okay, my computer is being very funky right now. I might have to cut out a lot of things to, I might have to cut this part out so that I can not have you guys sitting through this because this is ridiculous. I don't know what's happening. My computer decided to have an aneurysm. Don't know if it's because of the recording or whatnot, but very annoying. I'll see if I can get it fixed. Hopefully I don't have to fucking turn off the computer and restart this. That'd be really, really annoying. Okay, so the moment I paused and unpaused, it fixed everything, the recording. Cool, love that. Either that part will be cut out or it won't. It depends on how much I feel like editing this. Anyway, back to what I was saying. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go into U model, and we want to go to UE viewer, grab which, it doesn't really matter which one you grab first, but I always just grab the top and work my way down. And we're going to replace all these other ones that isn't the main tree stand because that's the one we're replacing with our main model. So we're going to copy this, paste it in there, and I went too far, and I'm going to delete all this. Now, I don't go through and copy and paste every single time because that would take a long time, quite frankly. And so what I typically do is I cut this half and half on my screen. It's a bit easier for me because as you could probably tell by the video format, I have an ultra wide monitor, but I think it shouldn't be too much of an issue for anybody on a standard size monitor, or standard ratio, I should say. And what I typically do is I just copy and paste after I've done the first one, and then I just press F2 to rename it, and then I just quickly rename it. So this one is, oh wait, I need to make sure that says leaves and not branches. Make sure that these are named the exact same way that they are within the game though. And another little tip I can give you guys is, you notice how this one that I just renamed ends with an _1, and how on the U model viewer it says _1_2, but it's the exact same name. If you ever encounter that, what's nice is that if you just copy this one and then paste it, it'll automatically name it to _2, and you don't need to rename it at all. So that'll save you a lot of time, because especially since there will be some models that are the exact same name, but they're just like 9 of them, and they're in that format, and it just means you don't have to copy and paste and rename 9 different items. However, what you'll notice is that some of them won't follow that convention, and instead they will have some other weird convention where it will just be like the model name, and then they'll just put a 1 at the end instead of _1, and then it won't work, which in that case you do have to actually do that one properly, but it does save time sometimes. And we need the main tree works. So that is just this one folder. Um, and so now all the main tree should be gone except for this, which has been replaced with the stage. We need to go through and do that for every single one of these assets right here. Luckily, the garden's actually pretty small in terms of the folders and the fact that there's no NPCs, which I will talk about later, but in my case, I won't have to deal with it, but I will tell you guys how to deal with it. But anyway, um, but you will have to go through and do this for every single one of those folders, and that can get a little bit annoying. And so again, back to just mentioning the drive again. And I'm not gonna sit here and show you me doing every single one of them because I'll make this out a video like 2 hours longer than it really needs to be. Maybe not quite 2 hours, but much longer than it needs to be. Um, so I'm gonna pause the video. I'll be back. And when I'm back, all of this stuff should be done. Also, I just unpaused real quick. I almost forgot to mention there will be a good few amount of times where the model is actually has a typo in it. Just make sure you're checking for this. I just wanted to mention that real quick. Now I'll be back. Okay, guys, I'm back again. I'm sorry, I haven't done it yet, but there was another thing that I needed to mention that I completely forgot about. Um, and I'm very fortunate, it seems. It seems like the gardens might be one of the easier maps to do because it actually doesn't have this problem either. Just like I didn't have the problem of the NPCs, which again I'll talk about later. But you will maybe encounter some meshes in your map that you need to not replace, or things that seem like they might be meshes, but you need to not replace them. So real quick, I'm gonna go to Lantern Festival, which is Sundo, by the way. Um, and I'm pretty sure Foliage probably has it. Yeah. So you might sometimes encounter a mesh that says something like yada 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 foliage type. You need to avoid doing these ones every single time. The reason why is because if you double click on it, you'll actually notice that it's not a mesh. It's a foliage type instance static mesh, which is not something that we have. That is not the same as a static mesh. Even if it does say SM at the beginning, it does not mean it's the same as a regular static mesh. Because of that, if you try to replace those, it will crash the game every single time. So if you're experiencing any game crashes, make sure that you check some of those assets and that none of them are foliage types. The other thing is that if you have made sure that none of them are foliage types, maybe some of the ones that are named normally might be a foliage type, and it's just they didn't indicate that or something. Um, Typically speaking, these will be like plants and stuff, so keep an eye out for that. Okay, now hopefully I should actually be back when I'm done. Okay, last time, maybe. I just wanted to quickly show you guys an example of when one of these um, meshes or have a typo and it might fuck you up in the long run, which is why you should check these as you're going through them. In the garden, we have the aqueduct, which is the folder, and aqueduct is AQUEDUCT. But the first six of these models actually spell aqueduct with an A instead of an E in the middle. And so if I went through this and I accidentally didn't catch that, all of these would still be showing in the map, and I'd be really confused. So make sure you're checking these diligently. All right, I'll be back. Okay, I'm back after like, I want to say 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30, which is pretty short actually considering some of the scopes of these maps. But like I said, the Hanging Gardens seem to be pretty relatively tame. So we have now successfully replaced every single mesh. One thing I did forget to mention that I'll mention here um, is that there will be a couple folders that you can skip over. If you run into a folder that doesn't have a mesh folder in it, that's fine. You can just skip it. The two ones that should be consistently like this across every map is the MM folder and the Sky Dome folder. We'll talk maybe about replacing a Sky Dome in the future of this video, or maybe in a future video if I can't figure it out, but that should be relatively simple. It should be just as simple as replacing one of these textures. Um, I think anyway. I could be wrong, but anyway. Um, but now that we have all of these meshes, what we're going to do is we're going to select the top folder all the way down to the bottom folder. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to grab every single one of these meshes, including the texture you made, and make sure that you deselect the material, so that way you're not packaging that. And once you've selected all of them, you're going to simply, oh, my Unreal Engine's a little bit bugged. This happens to me sometimes. I don't know if it happens to you guys. If this ever happens to you where your Unreal Engine kind of bugs out and everything's appearing black whenever you right click or something like that, simply save everything, close it, and then reopen it. You might have to reopen it a couple of times before it fixes itself, but yeah, this happens all the time for me. I don't know if it's unique to me or something. I don't know. But in case you guys are experiencing that as well, um, that's the fix. It's a bit annoying, but yeah. Typically speaking, I find that it happens most often when you have been doing a lot of stuff that requires like a pop-up. So like this, hovering over one of these has this pop-up with like all the information. I find if you do enough of those, it just kind of bugs it out for some reason. Sometimes it'll be black, sometimes it'll like just be like transparent. I don't know. Anyway, um, again, once you have all those, you'll right click, you'll go into Asset Actions, and you'll assign to chunk. Your chunk ID isn't important as long as you're not, if you've been creating mods before, as long as you're not overlapping with any mods you created before, so that way you're not like packaging a skin mod with your stage mod and forcing people to get a skin as well. Um, but if you use the same chunk ID but like they're not packaged together, it should be fine, I think. Anyway, personally, I just keep them separate. And it number has to be above 24, I believe. It might be a bigger 25. Typically, I stay in the range of like 50 and higher. But it has to be above that because the numbers before that is what Mortal Kombat uses. So we're just gonna we're gonna put this at 203 because my number conventions have been kind of weird. And once you have all of those, we're gonna do some small cleanup before we go in and actually test this. So for one thing that we need to do immediately is we need to work on what we're going to do for the normal texture and the RMA texture. Sometimes you might have more textures in both of these. If that's the case, I would just ignore it unless you know exactly what it's doing and how to manipulate it. But these two will show up pretty consistently. So personally for me, this can differ. This will differ on you depending on if you know what you're doing with texturing or if you know how to model and everything. This might be a bit different for how you want to do it. But for me, I don't do it very often, and so I want to try to use those as little as possible until I'm more familiar with it. And so what I typically do is I use a blank normal and a blank RMA. What this means is I'm quickly just going to grab the ones I was using to try to do the tea house before I kind of gave up on that, which should be on um, tea stove, I think. Yeah. So it's going to be both of these. So what we'll be doing is we'll be putting in a this color of normal, um, and I'll probably have both of these included in the dry file. So um, either come to the garden one or you should be able to find them pretty easily. Any of these folders, if you see one that has a matte or texture folder in it, check those. Not all of them will have one in there because, as I'll talk about later, because I'm sure I'll probably have to do it in this map as well. Sometimes the first map, or I should say maybe most of the time, the first model that you pick to replace won't be a good one. Um, Either because it's duplicated somewhere and you didn't think it would be, or potentially it has small animation on it that's making your stage move around, which you don't want, or and maybe you do, I don't know. But um, just go to one of those. Eventually, you'll find these two. Um, one of them should be this bluish purplish color. The other one should be this white color, but you should be able to just get it from the garden one. And what you're going to do is you're just going to replace your normal and your RMA with that. It should be the exact same name as your texture, your default texture. just with N at the end and RMA at the end. The reason for this, the normal is pretty self-explanatory. A normal map, what it does is it's basically what, like, I don't know how to best describe this because again, I'm not super into modeling, but it's like what makes kind of what makes your texture, like your model, bumpy and stuff. Like it's like it raises some of the model, and like it sinks some of it so that it adds that like um, definition, and so that you don't have to do that manually within the model. Um, and the RMA, this stands for roughness, metallic, and ambient occlusion. And it does exactly what it sounds like, which is controls the roughness of the texture or the model, the metallicness of the model, and the ambient occlusion, which is a bit more obscure, but that's basically it has to do with like lighting and stuff um, of the model. And so what I do is I just make it matte, which is basically just like makes it look normal, basically, like if you were looking at it in like a model viewer, by making it white. This maxes out, or not maxes out, it reduces all those values to 0, I think is what it does. And maybe it maxes it out. I don't remember. I think it's 0 though. If you know what you're doing with RMAs and everything though, you could definitely mess with this and make your own custom one for your stage. I definitely recommend it if you know how to do it. There was actually a video that I saw earlier where somebody had uploaded a video about, I think it was the Beyonders, uploaded a video about how to use Adobe Surface Painter to make RMA textures basically for your MK1 mods. I would recommend going checking out that video if you're more interested in this. Again, for me personally, I'll probably maybe look into doing that in the future, but right now, not something I'm really knowledgeable about. So I'm going to just leave it white. But make sure you do this. If you don't do this, what's going to happen is your stage is going to have a bunch of weirdness on it. It's going to kind of like look like it's going to have your texture on it, but it's going to kind of look like it still resembles some of like, or not resembles, but like has some of the stuff remaining from like the texture that you're stealing or like overriding, I guess. Or not stealing, overriding. And that's going to cause an issue that you're probably not going to like. Furthermore, your RMA, since that ambient occlusion does mess with lighting a bit, if you if it's bad, it might make your scene look entirely dark, like your entire stage look dark. Um, so yeah, and then make sure you also assign these to the chunk. So for me, that's 203. You're then going to package the project. It is not really important where you're saving it. Just press continue. That'll pop up. It's not really important. Just make sure you're saving it somewhere that you know where it is. And we're going to wait for this to do its thing. And I'm actually going to pause it and come back when it's done because this does take a couple minutes. So I'll be right back. Okay, it's done. You'll know that it's done because you might not have this output log, but because it'll say like packaging completed in the bottom right corner, and you'll hear like here a little like ding. Once it's done, you're going to navigate to two folders. You're going to need to navigate to your packs folder. So again, that's going to be within your game, I should say. That's going to be, as I mentioned before, in your local Mortal Kombat 1 folder, MK12, content, packs. You're going to come here. You're then going to also go to where you just packaged your mod over here. So for me personally, this is going to be unique to you wherever you decided to put that directory. For me, it's going to be an MK1 mods, window, no editor, MK12, content, packs. Now, whichever number you assigned, it should say pack chunk, then the number. You're just going to find the three that are yours. You're going to name it whatever you want, but you should follow the convention of A underscore whatever and then underscore P. So for me, I'm going to put A underscore monastery P. And we're going to just drag this over to our packs folder over in MK1. As a quick disclaimer, if you've never used mods before, you might not have the Cine's mod loader installed. Go install that because if you don't, then this is not going to load anything. If you've never used mods before, go look up how to install Mortal Kombat 1 mods because you're going to need to be able to, or not install, how to install, but like how to use them. Because obviously if you can't use the mods, how are you going to test the mod? But anyway, so put it in that pack folder and now you're ready to test. As a fair warning, you are 100% not going to see your stage in the exact right place. It's not going to happen. I wish I could give you better news and say, oh yeah, it'll be fine. But obviously, because whenever you're replacing this model, your stage that you're replacing the model with is going to appear in the location of that model. What we're doing right now is we're making sure that everything, or at least most everything, from the map is gone, and that the game doesn't crash when we load it, and that, and then we're going to note down where our stage is on the map so that we can modify it in Unreal Engine to try to make it fit where we're wanting it to be. And I'll show you guys all of that. So what I typically like to do is I just go to practice, pick any characters you want, it doesn't really matter. My game's actually not lagging like super hard this time, which is kind of surprising. There's my Ultra Instinct Goku mod, which I should really update. It's kind of bad looking back at it now. But anyway, we're luckily right on the Hanging Gardens.
Hanging Gardens.
So hopefully it doesn't crash. It'll be kind of embarrassing if it does. Usually a good sign of whether or not it'll crash is if you hear audio. So there goes the audio right there. And there it is. So as you can see, looks like it seems like I might have actually gotten quite actually everything. Except for the butterflies and stuff, which I'll talk about in a little bit about how to maybe do FX. I haven't quite tried it personally. I might try it first before I talk about it. Because this is the first stage that's like really, I actually think might mess it up quite a bit. But as you can see, everything is gone, which is exactly what we want. However, we do notice one issue. It would appear that my model is there twice. So I do recommend having Mortal Kombat 1 hook installed, because with Mortal Kombat 1 hook by Aramacer, I think it's, or Aramacer, I don't remember how you pronounce his name, but then you're able to then you can enable free camera, which is going to make it a lot easier for you to find your model, because sometimes your model might be behind the camera. But if we look here, we can see that our stage is right here as well as over here, which means that we have a duplicate instance of this model somewhere, not somewhere, like in these two spots in our map, which is no bueno for us. So I'm going to show you guys what I do to change where to change which model we're replacing, so that way we can try other models. But for the most part, we are in a very good spot right now. All the models seem to be gone, and no crash. So we're going to go ahead and Alt F4 the game. And so as I just mentioned, it turns out that this main tree stand is not a very good model for us to replace. Again, this is going to happen a lot if you're doing a new stage. If you're doing a stage that I have uploaded for you guys, what you can, I will either include a text document that says which model I personally replaced for each stage, or if I don't do that for whatever reason, you should be able to just look through it, and just find the one that says matte texture, whichever one still contains a material, I'm just going to leave it in there. That is the one I replaced. So anyway, back to what I'm saying. So we found out that this is not actually a very good one for me to do. So what should I do? Well, I'm going to try this main tree branches, because I'm very doubtful that this one is going to be duplicated, because I don't remember seeing the main tree multiple times. It'd be kind of weird to have a tree that's like supposed to be a focal point of your stage, have the exact same instance of it multiple times. So in this case, the solution's pretty simple. I'm just going to copy this, delete it, replace the name here, and then I'm just going to copy and paste this one and rename it to stand, so that way it's back to being a blank one. And then the other thing we have to do is we then have to rename the material and the textures potentially. Um, I think I will have to do that. I think maybe these use the bark. I'm assuming. I feel like I would have to. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. But I'm going to assume that it's probably using the bark um, and probably not the other stuff. And it turns out the bark actually also doesn't have an RMA, which is kind of interesting. Anyway, oh, it went online. Don't know why I did that. But yeah, we're gonna try this one next, see how it works, see if it works at all. But yeah, so we're gonna simply, and if you're ever wondering, like, if you're in a situation like I am where you're maybe wondering which material it is using, you can always export the model. I've already exported this one. Go into Blender, and funnily enough, this is the one that I've been using. I didn't even mean to do that. And if you just go to material, it's like, okay, yeah, these are using the tree bark. This one's using the tree barks. So now I know for sure that the ones that I need to replace is the tree barks. And they'll usually have the exact same name on the textures. So I'm just going to replace tree bark 1. Doesn't really matter, typically speaking, which one you replace. But the material's been renamed, and now we have to rename all of these, except for actually not the RMA, because funnily enough, this one doesn't use an RMA, which does make me a bit concerned that maybe it's using some sort of FX to create the barkiness, which would be very unfortunate. But we will see, because if it is using VFX like that, then I'm gonna have a bit of a situation to deal with. And I'm just gonna remove this one from the chunk. Once you've done that, make sure you grab everything that you just changed. So for me, that's these 4, and you assign those to the chunk 203. And since I've done that, I'm going to package the project again, and I'm going to retest. So I'll be back once I get to the stage again, and I'll show you guys what I do from there. Okay, so we're back. I have, as you see, got the stage in. I did do something that I'll show later, but and this is also here now. I know how to fix that. I just messed up and forgot to reassign it to the package, to the chunk, because as you guys saw, I tried to do the branches. Turns out that didn't work for whatever reason. So now I've done one of the thrones, and that seems to have worked. So yeah, I'll fix that as I'm fixing this up. But now I get to show you guys the I'm lying when I say this, but best, quote unquote, in my humble opinion, part of doing this. Um, and that is trying to get this where you want it. So first thing you should do is you should see where it is right now when you first see it, and determine how you need to move it. So what I like to do is I like to kind of place like kind of my camera a little bit where it would be. So here's what I'll do. Again, I highly recommend having MK hook for this. But as you can see, if I come out here, I'm just going to kind of walk right through, kind of look behind. So a couple things that I noticed is my stage is tilted. So I'm going to have to rotate it on either the X or Y axis. I don't remember which one right now. Or not the X or Y, the Z axis, I mean. I'll have to rotate it on the Z axis. But I'll have to do that anyway, because it needs to be rotated at least 180 degrees so that the front is actually facing the front, because right now, if I come back to how I would be facing the map, right now, the front is facing behind the camera and not towards the camera. So I know I need to rotate it at least 180 degrees on the z-axis, but I'm also gonna probably need to rotate it a little bit less or a little bit more, so that way it is actually tilted, you know, not tilted, I mean, it's actually going with the characters on the floor. So, and then the other thing I need to do is I need to bring it forward. So how I usually like to judge that is that after I've rotated it to where it will, the front's facing forward, I'll find the front in Blender and I'll just kind of move it forward, and I'll show you guys that in Unreal Engine. But now that I've kind of determined what I need to do right now, I'm going to Alt F4 to get out of the game and go back into Unreal Engine. So you'll notice my stage isn't small anymore, but that's because before the scale was at 0.1, or not 0.1, 0.01. Yours probably wasn't like that. It was probably at 1. If it was, doesn't matter. Either way, your stage might be too big, too small. This is another thing that will adjust over time to get it right. But for now, I'm just wanting to try and get this where we want it. So I believe my camera was somewhere around here, something like that. So I know I need to rotate it on the z-axis by 180 degrees. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Because rotating it on the z-axis by 180 will flip it. Oh, my bad. I did the translation, not the rotation. LOL. Anyway, so rotating it on the z-axis 180 will simply flip it entirely. So as you can see, now the front is facing towards me. But I know that it needs to tilt to the right a little bit. So I'm going to first check and see what adding it does. So adding it, I'm seeing which way it's going to tilt it. Is it going to tilt it to the left or to the right? So tilt it to the left. So I'm going to actually minus it. So I'm going to put it at like 160 and see how that looks. And this is something that you're going to be doing over and over again until you finally fine tune it exactly to what you want. Which does make it a bit of an annoying process, but it is something that you kind of just have to do. We also know that we need to bring it forward. So, and this is maybe a little bit too much tilt. So we're gonna bring it to like 170 instead, real quick. See how that looks. Though to be fair, no matter how perfectly you think you set up the camera within Unreal Engine, it's likely not gonna be actually perfect. So keep that in mind. But this is just the way I like to do it. So now I know I need to bring it forward. The best way to tell whether or not you're bringing which axis to use to bring it forward, right, left, is if you look down here in the bottom left, you'll have this Z, Y, X, and that is in correlation with what direction, what axis every direction is facing. So from looking at it, the Y, the positive value will always be where the line is going. The negative value is where the line's not going. So I know that in order to bring it forward, I need to bring it. I need to put some. I need to add to the Y-axis. So we're just gonna try like 500. You should do big increments most of the time, rather than small. Okay, that seems pretty okay. I thought somebody was at my door for a second. Anyway, that seems pretty okay. But we're gonna do it just a little bit more. And by the way, when I say where my camera was, I'm not talking about like where the camera is when you first like load into the game. I'm talking where I placed it. After I used free camera, by the way, in case that was confusing. But we're getting kind of close. I'm gonna do 700, and yeah, and then we're gonna have to move it over to the left a bit as well. That should be pretty decent. We'll do some more fine-tune adjustments here in a second. Not in a second, but after we've seen how it looks in game. And then to move it to the left, I need a negative on the X. So we're going to try like negative 500. See where that places us. Okay, yeah, and this is another thing, that since we're rotating, since it's rotated kind of weirdly, these X and Y's are going to be kind of weird. So, um, let's see. But yeah, this might be okay. This might be a little bit off. We'll see how it looks in game. A lot of what this is going to be is just fine tuning and like figuring out what we need to, like, where we need to put that in rotation, translation, and stuff to get it to look right. So once you've done that, you shouldn't need to reassign it to the package. I am going to real quickly, though, assign this tree branch, which, yes, I did forget, to the package before I continue. But you shouldn't need to, re-importing the base mesh doesn't typically require that you reassign it to the package. Typically, it will just stay. So then you can just package it again. Per usual, I'm going to pause this and come back when I'm back at the stage, and we'll see where we're at. Okay, we are back, and as you can see, we are actually pretty decently where we need to be. We do have a couple of things to work on. For example, the stage is... Oops, I always do that. The stage is a bit tilted, but it does seem like they are on the floor. The stage also definitely needs to be scaled up some more. It looks like it needs to be tilted to the right quite a bit. And we also still need to move the stage to the left a little bit. But that's a pretty good, that's pretty good overall right now. So yeah, we're going to adjust some of those things. This is going to be the last time I show you guys me adjusting stuff because, quite frankly, you do this a good few times before you eventually get it. And there's no reason for me to make this video needlessly long. So, it was looking like it was maybe something like this. I know that the stage needs to go to the left. And it needs to be scaled up, so 2 times might be a bit much. What about 1.5? Okay, we'll try 2 times. We'll see how well that looks. That might, yeah, it might be better at 2. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that for now. We'll move it to the left some. So it actually means we moved it to the right too much. So we'll bring this down to like, let's say like 200, negative 200. See how that looks. We might need to make that. I might just set it to 0. Yeah, we'll just set it to 0 for now. And we need to rotate it to the right some. So I think that's adding. Maybe. I can't remember exactly. Okay, nope, it's not adding, it's subtracting. So let's try like 150. See how that looks. And again, it's just a lot of this guesswork, and as you can see, as I was showing you guys earlier, the transparency. Like I said, it's just a lot of guesswork. So I'll be back whenever the stage is where I like it. All right, I'll be back then. Okay, after a long while, I'm finally back. And as you can see, the map is now placed where I want it. Looks very nice. You'll notice, and maybe you can't notice very well, the quality of the video might not be as good due to YouTube compression and everything, but some of the VFX is gone and some of it's still here. I'm going to show you guys how to remove all of it, or at least probably most of it, right now, as well as do a couple of other things before we end off this video. But right now, it's pretty decently well enough to ship. We just have a couple more things. As you might be able to notice, there are flowers in the background, little flower petals just kind of swirling around. But if you did not notice before, we also had some insects, some butterflies and moths and such that are now completely gone, and I'll show you how to do all of that. The reason why I did that first was because I was testing it myself, and now that I know that it's actually working, I will show you guys how to do it. You can kind of already see it. So the thing about VFX is when it comes to VFX, removing it requires, as you know, some basics about VFX. Essentially, what you need to know is that there are a couple of different ways that VFXs are rendered, and that is either through textures and through meshes. And then there's also ribbon rendering, but that's a whole different thing that we don't need to worry about. The main thing to know is that some VFX, and a lot of the ones that are going to be really intrusive to the experience of your stage, is going to be a mesh FX. However, unfortunately, Mortal Kombat is kind of weird in that they don't actually have all the FX for a specific map tied to that map's folder. So what I mean by that is that if we open up fmodel, which is going to be oh, actually I need to open up through my folder, which is actually another program that you're going to need to download. It's essentially umodel, but it does some things differently. So instead of you being able to view your mesh before you extract it or anything, what's nice about fmodel is you get this nice little text editor on the right, which is what we're going to need. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to set your directory to Mortal Kombat 1, set your UE version to UE4 latest, um, and you're just going to press OK. And then you're going to need to set the AES key, which is the same as whenever you're doing it in umodel. And then once you have that, you should see all of these packs. You won't see these ones up here unless you have my mods downloaded, which thank you if you do. But regardless, you'll just need to go to loading mode, all, and load. Once you do that, the folders will it'll pop up in the folders, and you'll have all this stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our environment, which is going to be the garden, and we're going to go to FX, and we want to remove, at the very least, these flower petals and these insects. So sometimes the flower petals are a lot easier because you just have they just have the mesh, not flower petals in particular. I don't know why I said it like that. Sometimes some of these are easier than others because, like I just said, these flower petals are actually just right here in this mesh. But we can confirm that by coming over here and double clicking on this, going to this text editor, pressing Control F and then typing SM underscore. If we do that, we can see that yes, this one is using garden fx message SM garden underscore leaf. And we can check that with all of these. This one's using the flower actually, so we will have to go through and get that. So I'll show you guys that as well. But this is essentially the process. You're going to go through these these ns underscore whatever they are, and you're going to check which mesh they're using, and you're going to note down the directory that they're using. So for these flowers, it seems like they're using SM flower from the generic global, and then they're using the one that's actually built for the map, which is this garden leaf. So now that we know that, we know for a fact that we need to replace this mesh. And doing that is super simple. It's just the same way you would anything else. You're going to go create the same file directory. So for us, that's going to be in our garden folder. We're going to make a new FX folder, a new meshes folder, and then we're just going to name it what we need to name it. So FX meshes, and we're going to name it SM garden leaf. We're going to copy the package name. We're going to grab, oh, actually, I should have grabbed the model. Just grab your blank model that you've been using for your for replacing other assets. Paste it in. I'm going to grab the package name real quick and minimize, and then we'll just rename it. And now we have successfully replaced that garden leaf. Now the reason why you need to go through and check all of these is because of what I just showed you guys earlier, where we have this one, which isn't a part of the um, the mesh FXs that are packed in with the folder, the garden folder, the environment folder. Instead, it's a part of, oh, so I think I voice cracked there. Instead, it's a part of the global meshes. So we know this path, so we're just gonna, you could go and make sure, but if it's right here, it's always gonna be there. So you're just gonna wanna copy this exact same path. So what you could do is you could drag over F model, Unreal Engine, and just make sure you have the same thing. So disk, disk shared, FX, global, message, meshes, generic, and since I've already made all of those, I don't need to do it, but you'll have to make all those folders probably. But once you're in here, we see that we need to replace SM flower, and don't do .2, it's just SM flower. So I'm going to copy this B, and we're just going to rename it SM flower. Now something to note is that because this is coming, you're pulling this from the global directory, it's very likely that other stages and other backgrounds and such are using, like maybe the main menu, are using this same FX, the same mesh to do its FX. And if that's the case, you're also going to be deleting those or hiding them in those maps as well. This isn't really something to be worried about, like for yourself, if you just want to get the mod and make it. But it is something that I would personally note in the description if you do replace the FX of your map, because it might make some other maps look weird, and I think you should make that aware to anybody that is potentially downloading your map. But once you've done that, you'll do the exact same as before. Just go to Asset, Actions. Mine is all weird again. Assigned a specific chunk. I'm gonna have to refresh it, or restart it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do that right now. So we'll do that real quick. Man, I love when Unreal Engine just decides to not. But yeah, it's as simple as that for doing FXs. The next thing that I want to talk about, and it's something that I personally don't have to deal with using the Hanging Gardens map, but a lot of you might have to deal with, and it's actually kind of a powerful tool if you can use it correctly, depending on what you're wanting to do with your stage. So I definitely want to mention it, but that is your map that you're using might contain NPCs, and you're going to have to deal with those NPCs, but you're going to have to deal with them in a different way than you would the static meshes, because you can't just replace the model. That model has to be a skeletal mesh, and it has to be pointing to the right skeleton for the game to not crash. So what do I mean by this? If I go to, let's say, the Temple of Kacharavala, actually, never mind, Temple of Kacharavala does not have any NPCs. I thought it did for some reason. Let's just go to Lantern Festival. I know that one does. If we go to Lantern Festival, we see these NPC props folder. And if we look at these, I can just come here and I could go into, oh, no, that's the shared, that's why. If I come, okay, I don't know why it's not grabbing all of them. Oh, it might be because it's taking it from the one I imported. Does the mansion have any NPCs? Probably not. Shane's lab probably does. Nope. Oh my gosh. Why can't I find any of them that have... Okay, the Tarkatan colony 100% does. Okay, there we go. That took way too long. Okay, so if we go to this mesh, as you can see, there's this mesh right here. However, it also uses this skeleton. Skeleton SKNV Fem Skin 001 Lod O A skeleton. So if we try to replace this mesh without having it be a skeletal mesh and having it point to that skeleton, the game would instantly crash as soon as you try to launch that stage. So how do we fix this, you might be asking? Well, the same way essentially you would for the static meshes, except for you have to do a little bit more work. So the way I'm going to show you guys this is I'm going to show you based off one of the older maps that I did, which is the Wuxi Academy. If we go to NPC, we have the Shaolin Monks, Skin 001 Mesh. So as you can see, this is a skeletal mesh, and I'll show you exactly what I did. So I'm going to get out of F model, instead open up U model, because I think it's a bit easier to find models. I think if you're doing anything other than models for modding, F model is better, but for models, it's just a bit better to use U model. So we're going to quickly get into U model, morph target. We need to grab the AES key. Okay. So now that we're in U model, we're going to go to wherever it is that you need the NPC from. So again, in this instance, I'm going to show you guys the Wuxi Academy. And so here's the NPC. And we're going to go to Shaolin Monk Skin 001. You don't need to usually worry about the shared folder. That's just for like all the props and clothing and stuff. Typically speaking, you don't need to worry about that because you're going to, make these entire things invisible anyway and throw them away. But you will need these skins and their meshes. You don't need all of them. Just like the static mesh, we only need one. But this time it does matter that you grab one of the Mortal Kombat ones, because again, you need that correct skeletal mesh. So I'm going to click on this and I'm just going to export it. And we also need to make sure that we know which skeleton we need. So in this case, just double click it, it'll open it up, and you'll right next to skeleton it says SK Inv Male Skin 001 Lod 00A skeleton. And to know where that one is located, you can just click on it and it'll bring up this new tab, which will tell you the exact package path. But you'll need that for later. So now that we have exported the Shaolin Monk, we're gonna just do a new folder real quick, not folder, new file real quick. Delete all this, and we're going to import the PSK. Just go to mesh, we're gonna back out until Wu Academy, asset, NPC, Shaolin Monk, skin, 001, mesh, boom. So now that we're here and we have this skeletal mesh, it is literally the exact same thing as before, where we're gonna select the model, go into edit mode, find a random vertice, select it in face mode, press Ctrl I, and delete all of these vertices. Oh, not vertices. Delete all the faces. Once you've done that, it's the same as before. You're going to export, as an FBX. This time it is very important that you export this without baking animation or without leaf bones. It was less important before, now it's really important because if you add this leaf bone, it could mess up the skeleton. And then you can just give it any name. I just called it blank male in my case, but whatever is fine. And I'm not going to actually do that because I've already done it. And once you've done that, what you're going to do is you're going to import that model right here into whatever folder it is that you're doing your first skin in. Excuse me. And once you've done that, you should get a skeletal mesh, a material, a skeleton, and a physics asset. You can delete the material, you can delete the physics asset. What you will need to keep is the skeletal, it's the skeleton and the skeletal mesh. So the skeletal mesh can just stay right here if you've imported it to where the mesh is in the game files. The skeletal mesh is going to need to go where you have this directory right here when you clicked on the skeleton before a new model. So typically speaking, this will be a shared base, and then it'll be something like in male, female. It might be something else if you have like a weird NPC, but typically speaking, it'll be one of those two. Then skin 001 mesh, and then it'll have the skeleton. So in my case, I've already done those, and I don't want to mess anything up, so I'm not going to overwrite it. But you'll just bring that skeleton over here. You'll rename it to what it is in the game files. And then you'll go back up to your mesh. You'll rename that to what it is in the game files. So for me, this would be that. And then from that point on, all you need to do is double click on this, change the import translations if you want to. It's just a little bit more security. And then you can just copy and paste it into all of these other folders and just keep on renaming them. And you should never have to do this process again unless the NPC is using a different skeletal mesh. So for example, I could take this what was I saying? Shaolin Monk's skin, and in the Lantern Festival here, which also has NPCs, there's Outworld Common Femme and Male. So I could take this Shaolin Monk's mesh that I edited and made a blank mesh, and I could copy it into these males because these males use the male skeleton. But if these females use the female skeleton, and I will say that some of them don't, and actually, now that I think about it, I don't think any of these do, but just for argument's sake, if you see that this Outworld Common Femme Skeleton 001 uses a different skeletal mesh, it'll probably be SK in Femme Skin 001, then you need to redo this process, but with that model instead, so that way you're getting the correct skeleton. But as long as you have the skeleton correct um, within your Unreal Engine, and as long as the mesh that you're replacing the model with is the same, uses the same skeleton, you don't need to worry about it being from the same map. You don't need to worry about it being, anything like that. So it saves you a lot of time from you having to export all these models and individually like edit them or anything. Um, but you do need to do it once. Again, if you've installed my folder and all that, I've done all that for you. I don't think there'll probably be any other NPCs that don't use the two skeletons I have here, but who knows? But the reason why I wanted to talk about all this is because the other thing that you could potentially do with these NPCs, something that I have not tried yet, but I do want to try in the future, is, and this is purely theoretical, but I'm almost 100% certain that it would work, is what you could do is you could replace these NPCs with your own character model, and if you wanted it to be animated, you could do that. See, one of the biggest problems with doing the stage mod this way is that you cannot give animations to your model because um, It's a static mesh. Theoretically, if you changed this so that you're using a model that does have a skeleton that you could replace, you could add some animations. It'd be really funky, but you could theoretically do it if it was something that you really wanted to do. But I'm leaving that more so for you guys to experiment. This is just to get you there. But what is definitely much more plausible is doing a skin mod over one of these NPCs and then replacing whatever animations that they use with your own. So again, if we're looking at the Wuxi Academy, you will likely have to do a little bit of digging to figure out what animations that they use. So because it's not very clear. Um, but if I, oh well, there's anims right here actually. Never mind. But yeah, you'll probably have to figure out which one of these are like which one of the models uses which or whatever. But if you could probably change the animation, and then you could use that if it's an animation that loops endlessly to um, add in a custom animation and then have some like custom NPCs around your world. With that said, it is a bit up in the air personally if this is truly feasible. And the reason why is because depending on the map, the NPCs are a bit interactive. So, take for example, in the tea house, if you're fighting around the NPCs, they'll start to freak out and run away. So, it's possible that because of that, you might either have to replace multiple animations, or it's possible that it just won't be doable. The other problem is that a lot of these NPCs are duplicated throughout these stages, and so you'll need to make sure that you're finding an NPC that is unique, which can be kind of hard. Again, going back to the tea house, I know that the tea house is a bit easier because it has Madame Bo and um, Old Man Wei. Yeah, I think that's his name. I think it's just called Wei in the files, but yeah, Old Man Wei. No, it is Old Man Wei. But since they have those, which are more unique models, it might be a bit easier on that map. But I wanted to just mention that because I do think it's a powerful tool that I would like to see utilized in the future, and I will try to maybe utilize it in the future. But I don't want to get too deep into that because that seems pretty complicated, and I haven't done it yet. But I did want to mention that. Okay, so now you have all your NPCs removed, you have everything done. Um, Next steps. Pretty simple. From this point, you've basically done everything. The only thing left for me to show you is how to replace the start this if you guys have as you guys have been seeing through the gameplay in the stage select, or if you installed any of my mods for that matter, the image is changed to represent the image of whatever map I'm doing. So in my case, it's the Evil Monastery, so we're going to be doing it with that. Um, so this is really simple. Very easy to do. You will need some sort of image editing software, but if you don't have Photoshop or something like that, Gimp is free. It's very useful. All you're going to do is you're going to go to UModel, or I think FModel will probably work fine as well. Um, go back to wherever your environment is, and you're going to go to UI Arena Select. You just need to grab one of these. It doesn't matter which one you grab, but just export one of these. So I'm going to export Garden Day. And in my Photoshop, and I'm gonna open that in Photoshop. So I'm gonna quickly go to where that was exported, disk, envi, garden, UI, arena select, and I'm gonna open this in Photoshop. Now it's really weird how they have this set up. I don't know why they've done it this way, but it's not a it's not like an image that's like actually fits in like a square or anything. It's like kind of weirdly oriented. But the image is pretty easy to, see how to edit it if my Photoshop opens any day now. There we go. So we're just going to replace this part right here. And the way to do that, it's really simple. Get whatever image you want to replace it with. So personally, I'm just going to look up Mortal Kombat 9 Evil Monastery, go to images, and I'm just going to use this one. I'm going to copy it, and I'm just going to paste it in here. You're going to want to make sure that it is the exact same length and height. You're going to want to make sure the aspect ratio is basically the same. And once you've got it looking pretty good, you're simply going to export as a PNG. I just do a quick export as a PNG. Name it whatever you want. I'm just going to keep it as Garden Day. Make sure you remember where it's being saved at. And in my case, it's just my downloads folder. And I'm just going to go into Unreal Engine. I'm going to make that same file directory. So in Garden, I'm going to make a folder called UI Arena Select, which just to make sure that that's the exact same. Yep, UI Arena Select. And I'm just going to grab this image and I'm going to drop it right in there. And then I'm just going to copy it and rename it to Garden Night so that it replaces both images. And it's as simple as that. And also, wait a minute. For some reason, oh, I grabbed the wrong one. Oh, I grabbed the one from, okay, that's funny. I meant to grab the one from my downloads, but I did not. I was wondering why it looked the same. There we go. Now it's correct. Again, copy paste, make it into night. Make sure you include both of these into your asset actions. Assign to chunk, 203, and boom, you're done. This will change the icon on the stage select. However, I want to get into some of the things that we cannot change yet. And it's not necessarily for a lack of like being able to do this in the game, like it's like not possible, but it's either because I don't know how to do it or because it's potentially not possible. The first thing is any sound changes. That includes changing the announcer voice to say the stage name. That includes the music for the stage, any stage sounds or anything like that. Right now, I have not been able to figure out how to do that. Excuse me. I do know it's possible. I want to make that clear. It is definitely possible. Others have done it. I just don't know how to do it personally. If anybody knows how to do that, they want to talk to me about it, and I can learn and then potentially make a video on it, I will. But as of right now, I don't know how to do that, and it seems pretty hard. The last thing that we cannot change is, well, maybe not the last thing. Another thing we can't change is the background when you're selecting the stage. So whenever you're in the stage select and you're going through the stages, how the background kind of like morphs into the image of the stage, we cannot change that, at least from what I know as well. The reason why is because the file that actually does that is not a simple, um, it isn't a simple like texture image. It is like actually like a semi like kind of built um, version of the map, or like it's like a weird material or something that's doing it. It's not just a flat texture, is essentially the point I'm getting at. And because of that, um, we just can't do it. At least from what I know. I could be wrong. If somebody in the future does figure out how to do that, that would be awesome to let me know how to do that. Let the community know how to do that. I will definitely add something to the video, like in the comments or something like that, if somebody does figure it out. But as of right now, from what I understand, it is not possible. The last thing that you cannot do, to my knowledge, is you can't change the text of the image, like what it says when you're hovering over it, or like I think there's like a name that pops up. I don't believe that's editable. Again, not because I like it's not possible, but just because I don't know how to do it. I'm sure you could probably do some script editing or something to do that, but I just don't know how to do it. So with all that, I do believe I am done. If I've missed anything, I will add it to the comments or the description or something. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to ask in the comments. I can't guarantee that I'll get to them immediately or anytime soon, really, because I only kind of check this YouTube account periodically. Because I do have another one that like I've been using for years that has all my watch history and everything, which is what I mainly use. But every time not every time, every now and then, I mean, I'll switch back to this account to check on things and everything. But feel free to leave a comment asking a question if you have one. I will try to get back to you eventually. Um, or somebody else might do it for me. Who knows? But yeah, at this point, you're free to just zip up the pack files that you're adding to the game, upload it, and you're good to go. Um, I can't guarantee that I'll be doing much more um, Mortal Kombat 1 modding tutorials, not because I don't like doing it or anything, just because I don't know if there's much more for me to tell you guys how to do. Um, but if there is anything that I feel like um, I want to show you guys how to do, or if like a bunch of people having issues with something, I might make a video to address it, um, and whatnot. So yeah, with all that said, I'm gonna stop the video now, and yeah, I'll see you guys either in the next one, in the comments, wherever. See you guys.